Hello, everybody. Preston Poulter here with Lords of Iron, and I wanted to give a review, kind of an unboxing, as well as talk about my time demonstrating the GURPS Dungeon Fantasy box set. The game is produced by Steve Jackson Games out of Austin, Texas, and it is a lot of fun. It is a very comprehensive rule set. If you're a person who wants a rule for absolutely everything, welcome to GURPS. I remember when third edition came out and there was this big comprehensive rule set, and people were like, well, yes, there's a lot to read, but once you master it, well, then you'll find the system is very elegant and it provides an excellent play experience for all concerned. And you don't have to worry about the GM being unfair because we all understand what the rule book says. But then 3 or 4 years later, here's 3.5, and then they fourth edition or Pathfinder. Now it's Pathfinders. The promise of third edition was really never fulfilled because the rules kept changing, not to mention all the splat books, which would kind of be constantly altering the power curve, and you always had to stay up on your latest rules. GURPS has been around since the 1980s, and the fourth edition of the game has been around for like 20 years, so there's not really a lot of rule creep you have to worry about, and that is a good thing. Now, there are a ton of rules, but I think if anything, GURPS delivers on the promise of third edition, which was there's a rule for everything, but once you master it, it's not so bad. So first, let me go off on what's in the box set. So you get a bunch of books. These are full color, well illustrated. The Adventurer's book you can think of as being analogous to the Player's Handbook. It has all the information you need on how to make a character. The Exploits book is more or less analogous to the Dungeon Master's Guide. Everything that the GM is going to need to run the game, all those rules are in here. Then, of course, you got the monster book. Magic is broken out into its own book. So there's a book on spells. There's an introductory scenario, I Smell a Rat, which I ran for the demo games. I'll let you know about that a little bit later in the video. And for running that scenario, it includes these two fold-out maps, which are nicely illustrated. The GURPS system uses a hex grid as opposed to the square grid that, unfortunately, all my Paizo maps are printed with, so there's some problem in taking the maps from other fantasy systems and just trying to use it for GURPS, because you have to kind of go, well, that's a square grid versus a hex grid. Although, you can kind of improvise. Some extra products I recommend everybody pick up if they want to really explore this system. The GM screen, which contains a lot of pre-made characters. And really, these are very helpful for new players because otherwise they find themselves kind of overwhelmed with all the options that the system allows. Now, the one thing that you don't find in the box set is a campaign setting. And so I recommend Hall of Judgment. This was written by Douglas Cole, and I was very thankful to Douglas for allowing me to distribute for him. So I do offer Hall of Judgment as well as the related monster book, beautiful hardcover book. By the way, all these are available in my eBay store. Check out the link in the description. So I ran some demonstrations of this game at North Texas RPG Con. I'm going to be doing some more at the Long Con later this year. What I discovered is that the Delvers to Go book is very helpful, but if you just take those characters and you just transpose them onto the provided GURPS character sheets, the players don't necessarily have access to all the information they're going to need because, like, first off, there's a ton of skills. So you can imagine if you mosey up to the table and you're like, I want to play the wizard. Here's the Delvers to Go right up on, for instance, Uncle Seamus, who I think has a lot of flavor. But it's like, all right, so you got 30 some odd spells, and each spell, in order to really understand how it functions, you're going to have to refer to the spell book. You've got 15 to 17 skills. One of the criticisms, which I kind of agree with, is the GURP system really has too many very specific skills. There's a perception stat, but that's not to be confused with the two related skills, which are search and observation. And those types of skills come up all the time because people are like, well, I want to look for this, or do you see that? And so I created my own character sheet and I took all this information and I transposed it over to the character sheet where, for instance, the wizard, I wrote down kind of a little description of all the spells and I put down the observation and the search Often they were untrained, but still, you need to know what those numbers are. So when I go, oh, hey, do you see that? Make a search roll. It's right there on the sheet. Similarly, like, there's a lot of specialty gear, potions, whatnot. I put all that stuff down, and you can't really expect a new player to do that because you have to access all these different parts of the rule book. So I did it ahead of time, and it made the game way simpler. If you let the players know a general description of what all their abilities do, you will find that the players will start using their abilities in the way that the rules intended, as opposed to just wandering around and not really understanding how the game works. For instance, in the I Smell a Rat adventure, after they get through the first 2 rooms, they go to a sewer which doesn't have a bridge across. So the choice is, would you like to wade into this river of poo? And the druid is like, I know, I'll summon a crocodile. Because, animal summoning spells right there on his sheet. And furthermore, he goes, in fact, I'll summon every crocodile within a few mile radius. Which is one of the things that animal summoning lets him do. Also, GURPS has specified hit locations. So, do you want to just hit the person in the torso? You can hit him in the eye. You can hit him in the vitals. And of course, where you hit them has something to do with how much damage your strike will do. If you stab somebody in the eye, it's going to hurt more than just hitting them in the arm. And of course, those called shots are going to be far more difficult because the eye is smaller. The one thing I do have to say about the system is it's fairly well balanced. Really, the power character out of all the provided delvers to go is the one you absolutely would not expect, and that's the Scout, or in D&D terms, the Ranger. And when was the last time you heard about the Ranger being OP? But in the GURPS Dungeon Fantasy system, the Scout is pretty OP. They can fire 2 bow shots a turn, and if they eventually, level up, there's not really a leveling system, but you gain character points, essentially 1 character point per hour of play, and you can get extra attack for 20 points, I think it is. And so after, say, 3 or 4 sessions, then the archer can now be firing 3 shots a turn. And of course, they've spammed the bow skill, so from across the room, they can go, okay, first 3 orcs through the door, get an arrow in the eye, just boom, 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 and they're dead. The wizard, no, they can't do that nearly as well. Like, the wizard can throw a fireball, but it's not the same as an arrow through the eye. So for people who really want to sit down and play the most powerful character, it's actually the Scout. There's one part of the scenario where they fight what you would think of in D&D terms as a Merilith or a Peshkali in the GURPS Dungeon Fantasy system, but a multi-armed demon. But a 6-armed demon with a sword in each arm. And in this particular case, we had a knight and a cleric and a druid and a halfling thief. So the cleric had pre-buffed the knight, kind of increased his armor, which functions as damage resistance in the system. So the knight is kind of wading into the fight, and the Peshkali just makes a charge attack. And by the way, you can get rapid strike, meaning you can sacrifice 1 attack to get 2 extra attacks, and the Peshkali has spammed like the sword skill. So the Peshkali can just go, okay, I'm gonna make 6, 7 plus I made, a full round attack. So I'm gonna make 8 attacks at your neck. The knight died. Sorry. That's the other thing about GURPS, is that the combat is pretty deadly. So there's an attack roll, so you could be like, okay, I'm going to stab you in the eye with my sword. Roll. I hit. If it's a critical hit, it doesn't allow a defense roll, but otherwise, the defender can go, I dodge. By the way, dodge is allowed against ranged attacks, so in a modern setting, yes, you can dodge bullets, which reflects kind of diving out of the way and whatnot. But you can also block with a shield or parry with a sword. But you only get 1 block a turn, which the knight blocked like the first of the 8 attacks, and then the parries are increasingly hard, and so the knight was able to kind of deal with like the first 3 or 4 attacks, and then the other front, kaboom, dead knight. Sorry. But a lot of fun was had by all. It is a good system for people who really like a comprehensive rule set. I recommend it. I enjoy running it. If you're interested in the character sheets, I've spent a ton of hours making them. I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to give out. Steve Jackson Games is not exactly as permissive in regarding their IP as other people, but I'll ask if I can provide those. And other than that, I really appreciate you watching. I recommend for those people who want a comprehensive rule set, check out the GURPS Dungeon Fantasy system. This has been Preston Polster with Lords of Iron. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. Take care.